Today we're discussing again recent election that's coming up. We got Kamala, we got Donald Trump. Still a very close, tight race between both candidates. And I think there is a narrative that's going on right now that is troubling to me, only in the context that it paints Kamala as replaceable and as not necessarily a bad candidate, but just a fill-in seat, just to say that anybody could have taken her place and they would be a reasonable opponent for Donald Trump. And I think what people are starting to think, at least on the left, the reasonable left, what I would call, is they're more anti-Trump than they are pro Kamala. And I understand that. Like, I can understand the context of why someone would be that, especially with all the comments that Trump said, uh, and not necessarily conceding the election, uh, saying that he would be a dictator on day one. Like, all of the stuff that he says certainly is dangerous, and I certainly understand why someone just saying being anti-Trump is enough. But in this election cycle, I think the deciding factor is going to go between who can rally their bases more. And with Republicans, I don't see that as an issue, even with uh, your reasonable Republicans. I still think that they're going to vote for Trump just because they're going to toe the party line. Where with Democrats, if we feel like Kamala isn't a strong candidate, then I think we could see the exact same thing that we've seen with Hillary, where you're essentially going to see an argument where people say it's I'm picking the worst of two evils, and they just decide to not turn out, and then that can negatively affect Kamala, just like it did Hillary. And I think it's dangerous to hold that narrative. And I guess that would be my first thoughts there. What do you think about that so far?
So I think it depends on your definition of the word enough. So if you mean, is it enough for her to win? That's one question. If you mean, should it be enough for someone to make a decision? That's a different question, right? So as for whether or not it's enough for her to win, I don't know. I don't know if it's enough for her to win. I hope it is, but I don't know if it is enough for her to win. As for is it enough to make a decision? I think so. So I would be in that crowd that I think you're talking about, where it's like it really doesn't matter how good Kamala is, and I think that this comes from a person who just truly appreciates the moment and the unique irresponsibility that it would be to elect Donald Trump. And speaking to this unique irresponsibility, this is clear by a lot of people. You know, first and foremost, folks that's worked with him, like almost all of his generals went away from
Absolutely.
him. Tons of people in
Absolutely.
his administration, his own vice president, you
Absolutely.
know, traditional Republicans, Mitt Romney, Liz Cheney, Paul Ryan, like, these are conservatives. These are not, if they are partisan, they're partisan against the Democrats, but even they know that Trump is a uniquely bad character and dangerous person.
Absolutely.
And this is not normal politics, right? So treating this like it's like it's John McCain versus Obama, right? Like this is not that, right? So if it were normal politics, then sure, we could dive into Kamala's strengths and pitfalls, but Trump is so uniquely bad that it really doesn't matter how good Kamala is, as long as she's a relatively sane person who is has the interests of the United States in mind, then that's good enough. And I think it's really not much different from Biden, because people weren't that excited about Biden either. Was Biden particularly inspiring?
No.
It was just not Trump. And I think that is that's the adult perspective for people who believe that Trump is the way we do. And I don't want to disparage or demonize anybody who does support Trump. I think that they just don't see him as uniquely dangerous, right? And if they have a different read on Trump, if they think he actually is a sane businessman who's going to look out for the best interests of Americans and cares about the country, if they think that, well, then we just think differently about him. And, I could be wrong, they could be wrong. But if you are of the opinion that he's as dangerous as almost everybody who's ever worked with him, thinks he is, then Kamala's strengths really doesn't matter in the same way that Biden's strengths really didn't matter either.
I understand what you're saying, and I can agree. And like, I damn near agree with everything. But the only thing I would say I would take some reservation with is your very first statement. Is just like, is it enough that she could possibly lose, or is it enough for her to win? And I think it could be the deciding factor. I think it very well could be the deciding factor where people are only thinking about, because like, if I'm being honest, you just like in your case with people's outlook of Kamala, you're not getting a very pleasant taste. Like people aren't, even on the left, like people aren't super excited unless you're a woman or like a person of color. Unfortunately, I don't want to put any statistics out there or stereotypes out there, but I will say like some of those demographics are a little bit more excited relative to your traditional center left leaning. I don't think that we're as excited, and that's an issue. That's an issue because I do think it could be the deciding factor of whether or not she wins or loses. And if we look at, I mean, I'm taking Hillary Clinton's campaign as my test case for this. And previously, Hillary was doing better with minorities. She was up in the polls, and I think her and Kamala have a similar profile in terms of how other people react to them. They're both women. They both seem to, even on the left and the right, have uh, this sense of not necessarily not necessarily being fake, but people don't feel as if they're genuine. Um, Not a lot of charisma, and I think when I'm looking at all of that, and then I see how they kind of reflect each other, and then I look at the polling for Hillary relative to Kamala. With in this situation, it's really close relative to where with Hillary, all the polls were saying like that she got it and we got it wrong. In this context, it's saying that it's really close, and I think if we're in a similar case or a similar scenario, then
Trump tends to overperform his polling numbers.
absolutely, absolutely, and that's my issue. I think the issue for me is that enough people aren't going to, and this could be a negative on Kamala for not being able to reasonably put her agenda out there for people to understand. But if they don't understand her agenda and if they don't understand the moment, then I think it's enough. There's enough ambiguity out there for them to decide to not to just sit out on this one. And I think that is my issue. I think if that's the narrative moving forward and like leading up until to Wednesday or Tuesday, I think what eventually will happen is people will say, you know what, I'm picking between two evils, and I'm just going to decide to not choose it. Like for example, I'll use my mom as an example. A she's traditionally a liberal. She doesn't like the abortions. My mom is religious, and I understand the situation, but because of that, she's like, I really don't have a feel for either candidate. And I'm like, well, there's more to Kamala besides abortion, and like in terms of healthcare, like that should be a big thing for you. In terms of the economy and like opportunities, your son is an entrepreneur. That would be an amazing thing if I was to be able to have access to funds or get access to capital where traditional lending wouldn't be able to serve communities or something of that nature. So it's like there are things that Kamala is doing that actually are reasonable, I would say, and I don't think it's being marketed. And because it's the anti-Trump narrative relative to the pro Kamala narrative, at least in this moment, I don't think people are going to see the relevance and getting out. And then if it is a battle of the bases and our turnout isn't as high, that Republican organism, it moves.
So here's where I'll agree with you. I think we risk repeating 2016, where you
Absolutely.
have lukewarm Democrats going, but I really don't like Hillary. I don't really don't
Yep.
like Kamala. And then you end up with Trump, right? And
Hmm.
and I'm worried about that happening again. Because then they're gonna when Trump's in, then they're gonna complain, right? It's like
Absolutely.
that's too late, right? Like you should have voted for Kamala. You should have voted for Hillary. If you didn't want Trump, if you're a liberal and you're mad at everything Trump did since 2016, if you're going to complain about what he's going to do in 2024, and you're sitting here holding your nose about Kamala or Hillary, it's like you have no grounds to complain about Trump if you didn't
At
resist him.
all. At all.
But where I think you and I may have a differing opinion, and maybe not, but this goes to something I saw. I mean, I don't remember. It was some news channel, and there was a woman there saying, why did we center the conversation around Trump all the time? We need to start talking about all the great things Kamala's doing. And I really don't know if I agree with that, man. Like what's the strongest case for Kamala? And to me, the strongest case for Kamala is like anti-Trump. So like imagine like you got two meals that you got to eat, right? And Kamala's meal is like, it's like some bland chicken, ain't got no seasoning on it, right?
I got you.
Like it ain't great, right? And like we could talk about like, yeah, but she has plans to get some mac and cheese. We got some season on the way, like we got a chef coming in, and we could try to talk about it, but like you looking at it and it don't look that good, right? And we could keep talking about this, but it's like, what if we shift the conversation to the Trump plate and it's raccoon meat over there, right? It ain't even
Right.
chicken. It's
Right.
it's like I think it's more important to remember what we ain't going to be eating. What we are going to be eating if we decline this, right? Like I know this may not be your optimal meal, but look at what the alternative is. And to me, that's the best argument. And unfortunately, I think the best argument for Kamala is an argument against Trump. I don't think it's a pro Kamala. I think if we focus more about how great Kamala is, I think we lose that. I think our bet we still may lose regardless, but I think our best chance is the anti-Trump stance. And another thing on the matter of I'll let you reply to that. Let me go ahead and pause.
I I can understand that being a strong argument, and I'm not saying that so like if we do disagree, it's minute because like I think both things are true. I do think that Trump is such a danger that it warrants people understanding the moment and realizing that really anything relative to him would be better. But in terms of the results of an election in particular, I don't think it's particularly useful because campaigns are about marketing, and campaigns you want people to turn out so you can get the outcome that, or at least a reasonable outcome, but get the outcome that you want or that you're campaigning for. And with the anti-Trump position, I don't think that is strong enough for people to want to get up. Um, and
It should
that
be.
I understand that. It should be, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's strong enough. I think people who are convinced that Trump is bad and that Kamala is confusing will just like, you know what, I'm just going to sit this one out or I'm going to write someone in. And I think making that case for against Trump doesn't help Kamala to me because Kamala to me is the only reasonable alternative. But if you extend that argument, then really writing in anyone except Trump is also a reasonable position.
No, it's not, because it's not going to defeat him.
I mean, right, but I'm saying, generally speaking, like if anyone who holds that position, like my mom, again, I say my mom for in the scenario again, she was like, "Can I write in someone?" That was literally her question to me. I was like, "Absolutely, you can write in someone." But I think to me that is the position we potentially put ourselves in, where people are like, "I don't want to choose between Trump and then this candidate that I don't
Yeah, but that's a false
understand."
choice, though. That's a false choice, though. Like by writing in someone else or by not voting, you are at least not hurting Trump, right? So you're helping Trump. If you have a position that Trump is dangerous, then the only way to effectively address that is to vote for Kamala.
I think that's a reasonable statement that hasn't been said.
Yeah, people may
I
not agree with that. People may not
right,
agree with it, but I mean,
yeah,
again, that's the same mistake we made in 2016.
right.
Assuming that you don't want Trump going, oh, well, I'm gonna sit it out or whatever. It's like, oh, that's basically what you're doing is you're supporting Trump. That's what you're doing when you do anything but vote for Kamala. That's support for. That's exactly what Trump wants you to do.
And I think that if that should be the narrative, like to me more so than like if that is the position that we're willing to die on in terms of Democrats, then to me we should say not voting for Kamala Harris is the damage. Not saying like where we're making Trump look so bad to where we're basically saying anyone can be put into this position and be a better candidate. And I think that's where the danger lies because it's not to me that's
That's
not
the truth, though, man. I
but
mean,
it's not
maybe not anyone. I mean, there's somebody you could think of, but but
but
for the
right. I
most
mean,
part,
but like you know what I mean. But that's how people. To me, that's my takeaway from this election cycle, as of the moment, is that people, the left in particular, we really aren't rallied around Kamala as much as we
well,
should be.
so that transitions to what I wanted to say next. So you mentioned sincerity early on. People, they didn't think Hillary was sincere. They don't think Kamala was
Absolutely,
sincere.
absolutely,
It's hard to be sincere because we have such a part of people think of partisanship, between Democrats and Republicans, but there's partisanship within each party too, right? Like you got the MAGA crowd and the traditional conservatives, right? There's a split going on the right, but on the left, there's also a pretty wide range. And for instance, if you look at the elections advertising that I'm seeing, a lot of it is negative, right? A lot of it is negative advertising. Here, you got the Bernie Moreno, Sherrod Brown Senate race,
man.
and
Yep,
you see the Bernie Moreno ads are all about him saying anti-abortion, no exceptions in any
yep.
case. And then the Sherrod Brown ads, you see all about the culture wars, claiming that Sherrod Brown supports transgender women
Transgender.
in sports, and right.
Yep,
So it's but here's the thing, right? Like most people on the left aren't really that woke, right? Like we're not about all of that stuff, but that is a faction. Likewise, most people on the left, I would say, do support Israel, and their struggle against Iran and its proxies, and Hamas and Hezbollah and all that. But there is a fringe that is anti-Israel on our side, right? And that's really focused on the Palestinians. They see Israel as a basically as an occupier, a settler that shouldn't be there or whatever,
yep,
right? So you have Kamala in a situation where, as you mentioned, right, it could be a battle of the bases of turning people out, and Kamala is trying to not make anyone upset in this party, and so it's hard to even speak sincerely in a unified way without splitting your own party and making people upset. So she tries to walk this line where she doesn't upset anybody, but then she doesn't seem sincere, right? So what do? Do you be sincere like me and then alienate your base? Because that's what I would do. I say, forget them, and just say what I want to say. But you might lose by doing that, because that's one thing that Sam, you and I both saw that Sam Ben Shapiro, and
yep,
what Sam said in that conversation with Ben Shapiro was like, Kamala can't really just say we stand with Israel. She always has to say, but we need a ceasefire and we need to protect Palestinian lives, because if she doesn't say that, then there's folks on the left are going to go crazy, right? So I think it's hard for her to try to keep the unity. Even Trump can't keep the unity together, right? Because he loses a big
right.
name, So, but now Trump just says I don't care, right? It's about me, and I don't really care about it. But Kamala is trying to keep everybody together, and I think that makes her seem insincere.
I, I understand that position, and I will say there is there's a component that I think is that I agree with that, and I think there's just another component where I think Kamala just hasn't been doing a good job with really outlining her agenda. Where it's just like, to me, I think there is a reasonable case to be made for Kamala as it relates to the economy, healthcare, international diplomacy, and it's just like I think she would be much of a continuation of what we have now. And
Yep.
right now we have record high stock market. Our allies trust us. We're back to being at the center stage in terms of, at least I don't like all of the conflicts that are going on around the world, but at least we are not necessarily controlling the narrative, but we have a hand in there. And I guess you could argue from an America First perspective that that's a negative, but I think stepping down from the world stage is also a negative as well. I mean, I think energy levels in terms of energy production is at an all time high. And I'm like, reasonable, these are reasonable uh, policies and reasonable things that we can speak on that would be a continuation of the same under Kamala. And I think those are all
You know,
good
here's the
positions to
thing, man.
have.
Here's the thing. Like, do you got pain in your shoulder right now? It's like probably not, right? But you don't appreciate that you don't have pain in your shoulder, right?
Right,
Like
right,
you're not grateful that your shoulder
right,
ain't in pain right now, right? You know, and so I think that's the problem. Is like even if all of that stuff is true, um, people don't appreciate it. They just go, "Oh, but inflation's high." Oh,
right,
they think about
right,
the few things that are wrong, and then
right,
they want to blame Kamala for it. They don't think about everything else is being done right. They just assume that it must be going right,
right.
and they don't even appreciate all that stuff. And I think that's the challenge. Is like especially when you start getting into politics, you get into stuff like the details of foreign policy and the economy, and your average voter is not even equipped to even understand. And
Unfortunately,
no
not.
offense, yeah, no offense to anybody, but like your average voter just doesn't have the time. It's not even about their like intellect, right? They don't have the time to really be informed on matters of the economy. They don't even know that we're producing more energy now than we ever have in the past, right? So like to make those arguments, I feel like it's difficult to make those arguments where it's easier to make the feel argument. Like, how do you feel? And that's exactly what Trump is trying
That's
to do.
terrible.
But
That's terrible, man.
that's exactly what the right is doing, right? And here's another thing too: the right has given up on defending Trump's policies. They don't defend his policies. They don't defend his statements. Why? Because they're not defendable. What they say is, and this is exactly what J.D. Vance said when he was debating Walls, is we don't trust these experts. We don't trust
Right,
them, right?
right.
We listen to experts. Though. We've been listening to experts since we've been here. Look what that got you. Do you like your life under Trump more? Do you like your life under Kamala more? And they're trying to just boil it down because they don't want to go into those details. Partially because when the experts do look at the actual economic plans and the details of what Trump says, it doesn't add up, right?
Absolutely.
So you end up, if you want to defend Trump, you have to take an anti-expert plan, which is basically an anti-thinking plan that replaces thought and actual expertise with faith and a demagogue, right? Which is horrible. That's a horrible way of going about it. But like they understand that talking policy is not going to work for them, right? They got to go to feel. But on the flip side with us, even though we have the actual experts on our side, if we talk policies, it may be a little too high level for folks anyway, right? So like what can get that feel across? And like I think the best feel argument is we can't have Trump back in here. Right? I mean, I
I
don't
mean, I get you, and that's a good one. But to me, that's not. I think that's where Kamala and her campaign have been wrong, have been failing. It's in making their case. And to be fair to Kamala, like Trump's been campaigning for the last 4 years. It's just like, and Kamala just got thrown in here in the last what 4 months. So I mean, I understand that she was already at a disadvantage, but I think her campaign has, just generally speaking, have been doing a bad job of getting out her agenda. Just, I think, just relative to all other previous candidates, I think her campaign in particular, like the key problem that I see when people are speaking about Kamala is they don't know where she stands or what she represents. And I think that's a failure on her campaign side. I think, and like being anti-Trump is good enough, but people not knowing what you represent is also bad.
from your perspective, what does she represent? Or are you saying you don't understand what she represents either?
No, from my perspective, I think she represents much of the continuation of what Biden is. I mean, I think that she has some splits, but like again, I think she would, in terms of her international diplomacy, I think Ukraine, we would still be defending them. I
Yep.
think Israel, I think it would be much of a continuation of the same, where we're still defending them, but we're holding them accountable for any overextensions that they do with the economy. I think she's not going to be as crazy with the tariffs. I think she's going to try to go after corporate taxes, maybe the
So
wealthy.
I want to jump in here. So I was talking to a friend of mine, Chris, and he works. He's in the finance industry, doing investment management, and he goes to. He said he was at a conference. I think it was. I don't remember what financial conference it was, but he said he was there, and they were talking about the election and like economic sentiment, especially as it relates to inflation. And what he said was, he said even though the Fed has done a pretty good job managing inflation. Also, inflation is a global phenomenon. It's not just like
Right,
just the United States that's
right.
been, like, oh, it was Kamala Harris. That's another thing. People tend to like, if something happens while your president is in office,
You get blamed
then
for it.
you get blamed for it. Like was it like Trump being like, well, if we were strong, then Hamas wouldn't have hit Israel. It's like, imagine saying that to George Bush. If we were stronger, then 9/11 wouldn't have happened. It's like, I mean, come
Right,
on, right? Like Democrats weren't
right.
saying that. Like, we don't like Bush, but was it his fault 9/11 happened? No, it wasn't his
No,
fault. So I think that's a mistake that we tend to make. Is it like whatever happens under that president, we tend to like say it's their fault. But that's a non-thinking answer. Similarly to how saying, well, forget what Trump's policies are. Just think, were you better 4 years ago or are you better now? So that's another
and
non-thinking.
I hate that. I hate that
Yeah, it's
perspective.
just these non-thinking arguments, and you use those arguments when it's in your interest to use
Right.
those non-thinking arguments, and then you start thinking when you want to go against your opponent, but when it's favorable to you, you don't think. But anyway, what Chris was saying is like even though inflation was a global phenomenon and the United States has managed it pretty well. Like our Fed has brought inflation down, much from because it was high before. It's not nearly as high now. He said, but even though
Right.
inflation got brought down, inflation is a percentage increase year over year. So even though the percentage increase has come down and we're getting to a more healthy spot in terms of deflation numbers, people
Still seeing that
still
natural increase.
yeah, people still remember what groceries were 4 years ago,
Right.
right? And so even though they've done a good job managing inflation, the fact that you still remember what you paid for eggs 4 years ago or milk or whatever, that it's a bad mark on Biden, even though the Fed did a good job managing inflation.
And that comes down to civics and people just having a decent understanding of the economy. And again, that's to your point. I think just generally people aren't informed as they should be. Um, and so right now, in general, I think a lot of people feel like they are worse off relative to where they were 4 years ago. And we spoke to like why I think that that's happening. And like again, with the stock market being at an all time high, it's just like again, how many people are in the market? It's just like reasonably speaking, I think if you looked at billionaires in America, I believe like their net worth went up by like $1 trillion in the last like 5 years or something like that. Like all of the billionaires, and it's just like that's a large representation of your market. Like you know what I mean? Like if three people have more wealth than 55% of the United States, then that lets you know that yes, the rich are doing well. Maybe not.
It's not even just the rich. Again, that same finance person I was talking to you about. I don't want to misquote him, but it was something like if you're in the top 40% of earners in this country, then you're still better off now in
Than
terms
you
of
were.
real income than you were
Right.
4 years ago. Yeah, so it's not just like the top 1%, right? Like it's like the top like 40%. Now the bottom, inflation is is rough, but
It hurts.
yeah,
Yeah, it's hitting. But I think this is where I understand where I understand how people can say or under like feel that they're not in a better position because like again I don't like hearing that the stock market is at an all time high when 60% of Americans can't afford a $400
right. They're
emergency.
trying to pay bills. They ain't got stocks,
Right.
right? Like
It's just like and it's like I don't like hearing that. It's just like and if they feel like that's a representation of the American stock market, it's not a good representation of the middle class. So like, I can understand that. And then if you throw inflation on top of that, then people are like, damn, like I'm hurting. And so it's just like I get it, but I don't think that we're as informed, and I don't think that people understand. Just like you said with economists, 95%, if I'm not mistaken, like I believe this was quoted verbatim, 95% of economists that reviewed Kamala's and Trump's economics plan was like Kamala's was definitively better for the United States. Will put us in a better position.
Yeah, and it's clear. I mean, even Ben Shapiro, when Ben Shapiro was asked about that in this conversation with Sam Harris, Ben Shapiro was like, I mean, yeah, because Ben Shapiro he don't like tariffs either.
Right.
But he was like, well, I don't think Trump would actually do it, right? I think that's just like
I hate
it's
that
just
argument.
a statement to like do like a negotiation. So what I got to say something unreasonable so I can scare the other side in a negotiation. And so, but again, that's more that wishful thinking of well, just don't listen to Trump. Just
I was just about to say that.
was your life better 4 years ago or not? I know he just said something stupid. I know I ain't going to defend it. I'm not going to defend it. I'm just going to
Right.
ask you, did you like it better 4 years ago or not? And then when you say that, it's like, okay, well then Trump policies don't matter at that point. Like it just he can say whatever.
Hey,
Just like you
right,
said, I can shoot somebody in the middle of the street and
right,
not lose any votes. Like
right,
he's right.
and that's dangerous. That is, and to me, just to get on the right a little bit, because like I think being on the left and being a reasonable part of the left, I think is talking about the negatives about the left, but the right, there's so much there, and that to me is the biggest. And I think it's so hypocritical, and for them to say Trump can say the dumbest shit in the world, and they'll not take his word for it. The Republicans have this masterful way of saying, I know what he said, but he will do something different. And I'm like, that is dangerous. Take the man for what he says, like instead of thinking that he will do like that is very if any other candidate was judged off of their assumed actions relative to what they're actually saying, like we wouldn't even be thinking about Trump.
Yeah,
But
Trump is unique, man. He gets away with everything.
I'm like, that
Everything.
is dangerous. That is extremely dangerous for you to defend someone and to
So
say,
here's I think I understand Trump quite well. Now, again, a lot of people would disagree with me. So Trump is not um he's not ideological. Like he's not like
no, no,
some
no, no, intellect.
yeah, he's not some I got fundamental principles and a worldview and I'm
Mm-mm.
sticking it. That's not what he is. Trump is like self-interested, really. Like whatever serves him is what he's going to do, right? So like if you're loyal to him, then you're good. That's patriotic. Patriotism means loyal to him personally. That's his. That's the way he thinks about that, and that's why it's like people are like, oh well, all of these people that left Trump, all these generals, your vice president, basically everybody, not everybody, but the vast majority of people that ever worked with you left, and it's
Yep.
like, well, the reason is, what he would say is, oh, well, they did a bad job, so I fired him. It's like, okay, when did you fire Mike Pence? Well, he was apparently not doing a bad job until he decided not to steal the election for you. Then it was doing a bad job. It's like, well, was
Right.
he doing a bad job or was he just not doing what you wanted? Right? Was he doing the bad thing for the country or was he doing a bad thing for Trump? And what Vice President Pence did was a good thing for the country, certify the election,
Right.
but that was bad for Trump. And guess what? Got rid of him. So I think Trump is relatively predictable. So I wouldn't necessarily hold him to 20% tariffs either, right? I think if he tried to do something like that and it was clear that it was going to you know either have bad economic impact or just look bad for him, I think he'll walk it back. I don't think he's principled enough to be like, I said it and I'm gonna stick to it. He's not that type of person. He's just going to do whatever. Just for instance, just like Affordable Care Act, what he did was he said, I'm gonna get rid of it. I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna get rid of it. As soon as he couldn't get rid of it, because you got honorable Republicans like John McCain, like, look, may not be optimal, but I think it is doing good things for my community. So when he couldn't persuade the Republican Party to get rid of it, then he said, well, I saved it, because I wanted to make sure it did better. It was failing, and I saved it. It's like, no, you failed to get rid of it. Now that's your story. But so yeah, I think he's going to do whatever's in his interest, and so that's why I don't necessarily think that he is like going to do a lot of the crazy stuff he says. I think he is always a moment to moment decision of like what serves his interest, and that's what's going to come out at the end of the day.
I think I agree with you, but part of me thinks that he's not smart enough to understand his interests. And I
I
think,
wouldn't say that. He's pretty good at going after his interests. I got to give him credit. Give him credit now. He's been
I,
pursuing his interests pretty
I
well.
mean, I'll say that, but I'm saying that in the context of saying in his previous administration, I think he was saved. And this is where I think this is the difference. Where I think again, like, and you spoke to it, 40 out of his last 44 cabinet members are not are not recommending Trump this year. And I think, just like you said, previously we had John McCain, Mitt Romney. All of your reasonable
Gone.
Republicans have been pushed out. This is not the same as it was last time. This last time you had people in the administrative writing op-eds. You had like the grown-ups in the room that were able to stop some of his dumb decisions that he may have thought have been in his interest, but
Right.
likely it may
Even
have not
even
been.
people like Pence who did do almost everything that Trump said, almost everything.
Right,
But he was
right,
like deny the election. He's like, look, I'll do almost anything for you, but I
right.
can't do
But I
anything, anything. And then Trump said, you ain't gonna do anything, anything. You're out of here. I'm
right,
gonna
you
find someone
don't.
who will.
Right,
Say these
and
things, kiss the
and
ring,
that's
do
the
what I
danger.
say, no
Yep,
matter what.
yep,
That's his directive.
and that's
And
the
if you
danger.
resist me, you're going to be like, Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney,
Yep,
all right.
your
Anybody who
enemy.
resists me, you're out of here.
You're gone,
Yep.
and that's the danger. To me, that's the danger this time is
There are no
there are
guardrails.
no guardrails.
Exactly.
Exactly, exactly. Like we both got it, bro. And that's the danger to me. Like that's where I think he may not be smart enough to understand his own interests, because I think back then he had guardrails. There were people like, you
No,
know what, Trump,
but here's the thing: it's in his interest to get rid of guardrails,
but that's
and that's what
but
makes him
that
dangerous. That's what makes the second term way worse than the first. Because the first term, he still had to play ball, right? He had to pick a traditional Republican evangelical and Mike Pence to make the old school conservatives kind of confident that he'd be okay. Now he's like, I don't need to have any pretense of caring about traditional conservatism. I don't need to have any pretense of anything. I've kicked everybody out who's not loyal. I know who's not loyal because
right.
those are the people who wouldn't agree to say that I won the election in 2020. So he basically kicked everybody out who was not loyal, and everybody knows if they're not going to be loyal, they're going to get kicked out.
They're going to get kicked out,
And
right?
now there's no guardrails. Now there's nobody to tell them no, and everything that didn't happen under the first term that got protected from those guardrails. And those guardrails, as Sam said, those guardrails got voices. They got names,
Right,
and they telling
right,
you, I ain't there
right,
no more.
right,
We need to not let this man get power again because
right.
you don't know what I stopped this guy from doing, and I ain't gonna be
Exactly,
there next time, right?
exactly.
And now Trump is confident enough. He's like, I don't even need guardrails. I need
I,
loyalty everywhere. And when you
and
have that, you're in
that's
trouble.
the danger. That's
Yep.
and to me, I think like Trump is good at a few things. He's good at marketing, and he is good at protecting his own interests. But he's also good at defeating himself. If you give Trump a mic and you just let him talk, he'll he'll defeat himself within the first 10 minutes. Like
Yeah,
he'll
that's why
do
he won't
some
testify.
right. It's just like he'll do some things to defeat himself, and I think what the dangerous part of this administration potentially could be that he will not have those guardrails. He will think that he's acting in his interest, and it will be something that's completely dumb, and it will not only be against his interest, but it will be a danger for the country.
Yeah,
And that
but there's nothing anybody can do about it. It's his second term. What you gonna? He ain't got to worry about reelection either. That's another thing. He at least had to worry about reelection the first term. Now he ain't got to worry about that, right? So he ain't got to worry about reelection, and he ain't got no guardrails.
that's the danger.
That's the
That
danger.
is the danger. That is the danger, and and that's where, to me, I don't think people understand that he is like he's not even reasonable as it relates to his previous administration and what they think of him. And if we don't understand the moment right now, then I think America could be in for a rude
Yeah, I
awakening
mean, I
because
think it's similar to Kanye West, man. It's like when you're the type of person that says, "All right, all the adults who actually care about the country and are confident enough to stand up for it against me, I'm gonna fire you and get rid of you, and I'm gonna replace you with people who are loyal to me no matter what." that's a dangerous place to be. You end up like Kanye West, right? His mom
Yeah.
can keep him grounded. His mom go, and then now he think he's something different.
I mean, to me, people don't want to like. And this, I guess, this is maybe another topic, but like, I think, it's time for the conversation to talk about the destruction of the right. And if I'm being like, it's hard to say, but like your MAGA has replaced the right. There is no conservative right anymore. They have all been taken out. Whether it be Mitt Romney, Liz Cheney, Paul Ryan, it's just like they are gone. They do not exist. There is no room in the MAGA Republican Party for them. Mitch McConnell, uh,
Unfortunately, man, I want the right to be reasonable, man. Like
like
I'd rather have a look. Bring John McCain back. May he rest in peace,
man,
and have
like
him like get the country back on a reasonable Republican with the reasonable Republican Party. I miss that, man. Like
it's
I
just
miss losing an election and just worrying about tax rates going down. Like if that's
right,
all I got to worry
right,
about, then go look. You're gonna cut taxes for the rich folks. That all right. If that's the worst I got to worry about, then that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I do, man. I rest in peace, the Republican Party, man.
right, and that's the danger. And to me, like I think the left, and this is where like I don't want to like I do want to ring an alarm, but I don't want to seem as if I'm not holding the left accountable, but I'm almost tired of the left being held accountable while the right is burning the nation. Like it's just like
Oh, it's
I'm
not a
like
both sides issue. Like I mean, there's
right,
issues on both sides, but the
right,
scale is different, right? So, for instance,
exactly,
we got craziness on the left too. We do,
absolutely,
right? But
absolutely,
but are we running? Our most left wing crazy woke people at the top of the ticket? No,
right.
no. We're running Obamas. We're running Hillary Clinton. We're running Kamala. Just centrist Democrats. Just no. We're not running the fringes. The right is now the fringe. That is what it is.
And and I guess this is a term that I wasn't familiar with, and like I had to get familiar with, and I'm not sure like, if you are, but are you familiar with the Overton window?
I've heard it before, but explain that.
So the Overton window is the opposed. I mean, not the opposed. It's values and policies that are deemed reasonable by the majority, and I think it's like supposedly supposed to be on a spectrum of the extreme right to the extreme left. So, what majority of people policies that majority of people deem to be reasonable within a like that seems to be the Overton window, and it can go from either right extreme to left extreme. And I think, and this is where like I hear the terms like the Overton window has shifted in America to like extremes, where what people thought was socially, politically acceptable was like 20 years ago is vastly different from what we believe is reasonable and socially and politically acceptable right now.
Well, and
And
to
I
me, it
think
sounds like the window is shrinking. Like if the window is like the things that like the range of policies that like folks agree on, I feel like there's not much people are agreeing on generally. Like what is the
they're
mainstream
not.
policies that we even agree on? Like it's like the few things that we can agree on are just so small. There's almost no window. It's just extreme left,
It's just
extreme right.
extremes.
It reminds me
Right.
of a video game I've been playing lately, Dragon Age of Elgard, and you look at the reviews, there's some like LGBT characters in it, and there's some, I would say a little bit of preachiness in the story. I haven't finished it, but like when you look at reviews for it, it's like nines and tens and zeros and ones. Like ain't no sevens, right? Like it's just strictly. But even our video games are like polarized, right? So
Right.
it's crazy, man.
But to me, that is dangerous because what's occurring is even on the left, but more so on the right, what it's doing is it's making it socially acceptable to be extreme, and what that causes is extreme policies, and then what those extreme policies cause is extreme change, and for a society's stability is what we're looking for, and changes. I mean, I do like changes, but they need to be gradual.
Yes.
And I think
And I think that's
what
on the left too. We're moving too fast, probably.
right, absolutely. And I think I think what's happening more so on the right though is that, and I'll say it's a representation of what's happening in America in general. But I think the biggest problems with the right is lack of education, and people don't want to talk about it. It's just like they just aren't reasonable,
you
bro.
you know
They
what your
are.
problem is? You ain't got no education.
That's it. That is it, bro. Like they are not reasonable. And if I'm being honest, like America isn't talking about like I like we need two reasonable parties. America
Yes, yes, we
needs
do.
two
Yes.
reasonable parties in order to exist. If we have one extreme and the other that is just the opposite, it's just like that is not we
So I have
cannot
an idea though.
exist.
I have an idea. I have an idea. I don't think we can make people more reasonable, at least not easily. Humans, we're just, I don't know, man. We're not designed to be reasonable at scale, I don't think, unfortunately. But what, unfortunately, but what I think we can do is create an environment that makes being reasonable more acceptable. So, for instance, I think when you have such negativity and hate, like at a personal level, on an interpersonal decency human level, right? When that just starts to blow up, it makes being extreme more acceptable. It makes it more natural to be extreme, right? So like if I come in and I'm drinking a mug that says leftist tears on it, and I'm trolling
Right,
and making fun of you, and I always make you try to look as stupid as possible. It's like in that situation, like I can't even really be reasonable with you, right? I
right,
have you're just an enemy, and then I have to make you look as bad as possible, and you make me look as bad as possible, and we just do that dance until we just run to the extremes. But like if we can try to like become more cordial and more civil, kind of like the difference between talking to somebody in person and talking to somebody on the internet when everybody got keyboard courage. If we can move towards civility, then I think our politics can move back closer to normal potentially. But I don't know if we can get smarter, but I think we can get more civil.
I think we got to. I like both. I would like civics to be where it's where, but I would like both though. And I agree that civility and turning down the temperature would do just turning down the temperature in general. I think would just do a lot of good. But I think our problems, even if you turn down the temperature, I think the right has some serious issues in terms of just number one, education, two, understanding objective reality. I'm talking about, bro, like we can look at a video of Capitol riots and they walk away with it being a peaceful protest.
Well, you can also show
And
a video of the Capitol riots that was peaceful, though,
I mean,
right? So
I mean,
that's the problem, right? So like what you do is it's like imagine there was like a mass shooting, right? Killed like 100 people. And then you show like the scene like 10 minutes after the shooting. It's like, see, it's peaceful. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you show that video,
I mean,
if you
but
show the
I
other
mean,
video, then it's not, right?
but
Because
they
that's what they show, right?
everyone
They'll show
right.
like the police escorting like 5 people through the Capitol. They're just walking around, talking, making conversation. You're like, see, it's fine, right? But then if you look at a different video, then you're like, oh, they broke down the window. Oh, it's an angry mob. Oh, this cop is being squeezed through the doorway. Ooh, like it just depends on what video you're looking at.
But it's to me, it's like it's more than that because Republicans, I like just like you said, they on Fox in general, like with Tucker and all of them, they did show those videos. They showed videos of like maybe 40 minutes before all of the craziness happened, and but like everybody had an opportunity to see what really
Dude,
happened.
I remember
And
that moment, man. I remember that moment. I'm sitting there. I think I was working that day, and then I like opened up YouTube, and I'm like seeing the riots. There's people all over the Capitol. People. I'm
yep,
like, what am I watching? I'm
yep,
like, this is crazy. I laid
yep,
down on the floor for just a moment.
yep.
I'm like, we really breaking into the Capitol trying to. I'm like,
Oh,
where are we at? What kind of country are we in right now? Like, this is.
yep,
I felt embarrassed. I'm like, this is
yep.
United States. This is what we do in the United States. We lose an election and then we break down the building. Come on,
Yep.
man. Like this is some animalistic barbarian garbage, is what it is.
But the troubling part to me is that everybody can see that, and then Lindsey Graham, Kevin McCarthy, all of Mitch McConnell, who I think is still being reasonable, at least to holding his position, all of your reasonable Republic, Ben Shapiro, Piers Morgan back in the day, everybody comes out with this rebuke of Donald Trump, rebuke of January 6th, and then forget that it ever happened or minimalize it as soon as. And I'm like, this is where the Republican Party,
Well, they don't have
they're
a
losing.
choice. They don't have a choice. Their choice is, change your values and or minimize them or try not to talk about your values or talk about them and get kicked out by Donald Trump. Those are your two options.
But that's
Right? If you want to stay in government, you have to sign on to the big lie. You have to act like January 6th was okay. Those are your options. And if you don't, then you got to be like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and Mitt Romney and all these honorable Republicans
and get
who
gone.
said I'm going to keep my integrity at the cost of whatever that is, right? And then it's like, okay, well then you're out of office.
But the
Okay,
cost is the Republican Party. That is the
yes,
cost.
that's
Once
the
you
cost. Yes,
that the cost is once your Liz Cheney's, once your Mitt Romney's,
resignates to the Republican Party.
yeah, absolutely. But that's the danger. That's the danger. Again, America needs two reasonable parties in order
Right,
to
and we're on
exist.
the left. We're like, come on, Republicans,
Like
help us out,
literally,
yo, help us
like
out.
that's literally, and that's where it's just like that to me. I'm almost, I almost think the way to rescue the Republican Party is to infiltrate it because it's just like if they are not going to be educated on their own, then the only way to do so is to come there, act as if you're one of them, and to educate them, and then to gradually educate the base and gradually push them towards the center. It's just like
I don't think that
it,
works, man. I think you just get attacked as a rhino.
that's
I think that's exactly. I think Paul Ryan. I think all the old school conservatives would love to do that, but what happens? They just get kicked out of the party, and then they end up supporting Kamala Harris. I think that's what happened.
then it needs to be then the left needs to infiltrate.
We
Like I'm
need to
saying,
get
like
better. I think we need to get better on the left. Now, again,
that's
like you said, are we as bad as they are? Has the
right,
extreme taken over our party?
right,
No, the
right.
extreme has not taken over our party. The extreme exists though, and I think our leaders are kind of hesitant to call them out because we need the base, right? And
Yeah,
if we
I
really
agree with
make
that.
them upset, then it's hard to do that. But then conservative seize on that to say, well, they're not pushing back against it, and then they give the few crazy people that do exist on the left a microphone, and that's all they talk about, right? And then that the minority of the left fuels the culture war on the right. But most of us on the left aren't really. We're not woke. We're not crazy. We're just normal
Right,
people who want higher tax rates for rich folks, right? Like it's not
that's it.
it's not that crazy over here for the vast majority of people, and that's why the top of our ticket is centrist Democrats. But regardless, I think if we can not take the tribalism bait and we can approach conservatives with respect, then we can turn down the temperature in a way that makes them less afraid, that makes those negative attack ads a little less effective. um yeah, because I don't think I think if you go on the right and try to do it, you just get marked a rhino and you end up back over here. I think the only thing we can control is ourselves, and if we do a better job on the left, um, of having respect for people on the right, right? So, for instance, you can think whatever you want about Trump, right? You can think that he's Hitler or whatever people have compared him to that. I don't think that he's I think there's similarities, but I don't think honestly, I don't think Trump's principled enough to be like Hitler. I think Hitler's
Right.
a principled person who actually
Yeah.
cared about the Aryan race. I don't think Trump really cared about anybody but himself. But anyway,
Right.
to get away from that, however you think bad about Trump, that should not impact how you think about Trump voters, right? There's two different things. We need to show respect and understanding and kindness to the Trump voter so that we can let them know that we're not crazy, and try to bring them in to create this more reasonable Republican Party. If we approach every Trump voter like they're a member of Nazi Germany, it's like we're not going to make any progress, right? So I think we need to on our end just try to be more civil and respectful and bring them in like brothers and fellow countrymen
I
than,
agree.
attack them like they're as bad as we may think Donald Trump is personally.
I completely agree, but it's like it's understated how unreasonable the Republican Party is. It's just like you can be as kind and respectful as possible, but if we don't understand objective reality and we have our own different set of facts, it's just like y'all
Yes,
just
but but
don't
but
get it.
different facts doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means that you were told something different.
Right, right. It means that they need to be educated, and that's where to me, like education is the
Well,
biggest
I just
thing.
worry about them feeling like we're talking down to them if we come at them like that. It's like, again, like you walk up to somebody, well, your problem is you ain't educated. It's like that's
And
not
that's
going to
their
go well.
problem.
I mean, even if
But,
it's true, that's not going to go.
that's their problem, bro. They are dumb, dumb as rocks, bro. They are dumb. 95% of the economists say this person's better. Well, how do you think you was doing 4 years ago? It's just like 95% of economists say this candidate's economic agenda is going to be better for the economy. How do you think you was doing 4 years? Did you not hear me? It's just like it, it's hard for me, bro. It's just like, and I understand the left accountability narrative, but I'm growing tired of it when the right is fucking up so hard, bro.
Yeah, but how
They
do
are.
you fix it though? They are, but how do you fix it? And I
And
think the only thing we can control is ourselves, man. That's why I wrote my book, man.
you're
Good
right.
faith politics is like, what can
You're
we do
right.
on the left to be better? Because if you try to rely on the Republican Party to get better, you in for some trouble. I'm like, we can't rely on them. We got to do what we can do on our side of the aisle. That's what we got to do, man.
They fought. I mean, and I agree with you, and like I'm all for it. It's just like you're certainly right that we only can control what we can control. But I'm like at some point, like they need some accountability. Somebody got to tell them, y'all are fucking up. Y'all are going in the wrong direction. Y'all are wrong. Like, and it's just like if we're always going to police ourselves while they're burning down the country, it's just like that's something has to change. Like and I agree with you, turning down the temperature, and maybe I'm wrong in terms of not necessarily wrong. I'm just emotional right now. So for everyone that hears me, it's just like this is likely an emotional moment, but Republicans have been messing up for a while, and it's just like if any other candidate, and it blows my mind, if any other candidate were to do what Donald Trump has done or said the things that Donald Trump have said, and 10 years ago,
Even live the life he's lived.
even it would be unthinkable for him for them to be a candidate. He has mentioned grabbing women by the pussy, by his words, grab them by the pussy. He has been convicted of multiple crimes. It's like
Even
he
civil suits
has
for rape.
even civil suits for it. He has incited a riot on the Capitol. It's just like I don't
Does not commit to a
understand.
peaceful transfer of power
Like,
unless he wins.
right, hasn't conceded the previous election. What are we doing? If Barack Obama, like
And,
the
and
double standard,
everything you're saying is exactly why I said not Trump is good enough. Like if you really
like,
understand his unique dangers, it's good enough to make a decision. Now, is it good enough for her to win? Maybe not, but it should be good enough for you to make a decision.
but it's the double standard that is concerning. It's the double standard for the right to condone this sort of behavior and get
No,
behind
speaking of the double
a
standard,
candidate like
one
that.
thing I really don't like hearing is like, well, election denial is on both sides because Hillary Clinton said that Russia helped Trump. It's like that's not even comparable. That is
Right,
not comparable at all. Hillary Clinton conceded like that night. She was like that night, like, all right, you won the election. Now she said you had some help winning the election, but you never disputed that he won the election. Nobody on the
right,
left said that Hillary won in 2016. No,
right,
no one I've heard ever, including Hillary, ever said that Hillary won. They just said
right,
that Donald Trump had some help that he shouldn't have had.
right.
But yeah, that's the election denialism being a two party thing. That's just not that's not true.
It's it, it's blowing my mind the false equivalency that in the double standards that exist in this election to where Kamala has to be flawless, and Trump just gets to be himself. He just can't fuck up drastically. Like, like Kamala has to be completely flawless. She has to be perfect, and Trump can't say the worst thing imaginable. He can't say the worst thing imaginable.
He don't mean that. He don't mean
Right?
what he says.
It's like,
You can't take
it's like,
Trump. You ain't learned by now. You can't listen to what he says.
I'm like, I'm like, and the thing is, like, if you listen to the Ben Shapiro Sam argument, Ben Ben's answer to like four questions was to not take Trump for literally,
Yep.
and I'm like, what
That's
is
dangerous.
this?
That's dangerous. That is a
Like,
danger because at that point you can do no wrong. You're
right?
infallible. You might as well just say Trump is infallible. Whatever he
Well,
says, don't worry about it. Do not worry about it.
I'm like, and that's to hold someone to that high. It's almost religious,
Yes.
and it's just like, and that
Well, here's the
is
thing. Trump demands loyalty, just like a
right,
god. Just like do
and
not question me. Do
right,
not doubt me. If you doubt,
right,
you will be exiled.
right.
And
I
he's
mean,
executed on that.
I can commit murder. I can shoot someone. I can shoot someone. He can be recorded saying it. I can shoot someone and I will not lose a single vote. He can have a video of him recording himself saying it. This could be real. This is a real video. Like,
It's the
like,
same thing as him saying you can just
like,
grab him by the pussy. I can just shoot
this
somebody.
is
I mean,
like,
it is what it
it's
is. He's like, look, I'm me. I'm
like,
me. Ain't nothing
and
nobody can do because I'm me. I'm the chosen one, as he said.
it's like, and again, he increased the deficit. It's just like, I don't understand what Republican like, I honestly don't understand. And this is like, if there was a logical pathway to Donald Trump, to me, like, as it relates to just being a reasonable Republican, like, I don't see how you logically believe that he is the best candidate for the like it I don't see it. Like, I don't even, I'm trying to
Well,
reason.
here's the logic. The logic is on the self-interest level, and this is probably the strongest argument, is Donald Trump is the path to power, right? So that's why you have people like JD Vance, never Trumper, never Trumper, nope, never, never,
Right.
never kiss the ring
Called
to
him the
power. I can
closest
be
thing to
vice
Hitler.
president. I can be the vice president. Sign me up.
Right.
Sign me up. And that's what another thing. Sarah Palin in that conversation with Mehdi Hassan and Destiny. Sarah Palin said, because basically she was talking about war, and he was like, "Well, John McCain was big on war," and she was like, "Well, are you criticizing me for taking the job to be vice president?" It's the same thing. It's like, you could say, "Oh, I don't like Trump this, I don't like Trump that," but if he's your path to power, then a lot of people just go, "Well, forget those principles I had. I would like to be vice president of the United States." And so, yeah, I think that's the main argument. Honestly, I think that's because I don't think the Republicans actually believe, and especially the old school Republicans, I don't think they actually believe that Trump has good policies or that he's actually a good candidate. I think they just know and they understand that he is their path to continued power, and that if they go against him, they're just going to get kicked out of power the same way everybody else was that had principles. And it's like, well, either I'm gonna stay in office and not have principles, or I'm gonna have principles, but then I ain't gonna have office. It's like, well, then I might as well, and then someone else is gonna replace me who doesn't have principles. So what's the difference between me having principles and me not having principles? Nothing other than I get fired, right?
No.
So I mean, I think that's probably the main argument. That's the true, honest argument. I don't think they actually like him. I think they just understand that he owns the base, and as long as he owns the base, there's nothing they can do about it. There's nothing they can do. And now, as for like the non cynical, personal power dynamic argument, I think their argument is similar to Ben Shapiro's argument that he made, which is, sure, he says things I don't like, but if you look at the things he did, if you look at the world the way it was when he was in office, I prefer that world over the Biden's world. And just on raw output of what happened during the presidencies, I'm not going to think about policies. I'm not going to think about anything specific. I'm just going to just which one did I like existing in better? Then they go with Trump. I think that's the non political power argument for Trump.
It's a bad
It
argument.
is a bad argument, but that's what it is.
It's a bad argument, and it it's concerning. It's concerning that they're willing to. to go that low. It's just like again, I think we both have talked about our affinity for a reasonable Republican.
Yes.
Like this is so. It's just like this shows how we can be unbiased. It's just like the Republican Party is in shambles right now. This is bad. When you are stooping this low, when character does not matter, when election integrity doesn't matter, when like when common sense and objective reality does not matter, you are in dangerous waters. And then, just like you said, if it is your self interest or if it is power, you're only in power so that you can be some sort of solution or tool for his self interest. You will not be like there's not much that you're going to be able to do. If you are vice president, it's because at some point I'm going to need you to do something that's going to serve my interest.
Yep.
If you are in this position, it's because at some point I'm going to need you to do something that's going to serve my interest. And if they don't understand that his interest is the only thing at at the top of his mind, like I don't understand. Even though like I get it, I get what you're saying in terms of people having, and this is again another fundamental problem that I have with Americans. And I understand it, but it's feeling versus fact. Like the fact is that as you said, in terms of real time wages, um, they're higher. It's just especially for 40% of higher
Upper
income
income.
earners,
Yeah.
right? In terms of our economic growth, the stock market, oil production, we're at all time highs. In terms of the economists looking at tariffs and Trump's word tariffs, the best word in the dictionary, the closest thing to better than love is literally what he said. Better than love. Like number one, and this is just something that I don't understand. Republicans in general, and I guess Ben would be an example of a reasonable Republican in that context. It's just like tariffs to me, especially thinking about them in that extreme regard, is so anti-capitalist. It's the most
Yeah,
anti-capitalist thing I can think
Republicans were
about.
never pro
Like,
tariffs. They were
like,
always free market and efficiency.
like,
They were never that way.
what is that? Why are you protect? I mean, it's protectionism. Why are you protecting these markets? If we can get a $10,000 electric car from China,
Why not?
what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
so and this is where Trump has changed the Republican Party, right? Like he used old school Republicans. Yeah, they were free market. We're
like,
capitalists. Yeah, and it was, if anything, it was the Democrats who were a little more protectionist about worried
right.
about. But yeah, now Trump is like trying to steal that. He's the because here's the thing. Trump again. He's not a what's the word I'm looking for? Idea based guy, right? He's not like he doesn't have a political worldview and about what's the best way to run a country. Like he's not worried about that, right? He's worried about himself, and what he's succeeded at is grievance politics, right? So it's like, oh well, you're not doing too well. Well, we'll blame the transgender folks in school, blame the immigrants coming across, and so it's like he's trying to say I'm for the common man, right? While still cutting taxes for rich folks like himself. But he's trying to make that populist play of being for the common man. When you do that, you have to abandon old school conservative values like capitalism and free markets, free
And
trade,
that's
all of that. Yeah.
like that. But to me, like, I don't even understand how. Again, this is where education to me is a point in that, because it's just like Ben. It's just like if you're talking about a candidate who you're not taking at his word, you don't agree with his economic policy because you're not for tariffs. It's just like, so what are you doing? You were against January 6th. It's just like by the facts. Like, why are you supporting this candidate? It's just like I don't understand how Republicans are going, especially reasonable Republicans, how they're going out of their way, and then like his answers are deflection. His answers are he's not going to do what he says he's going to do. I'm like, do you not hear yourself? This is dangerous. This is dangerous. You don't agree with the man's economics. You don't agree with his character. You didn't agree with January 6th. You're saying that your best answer for why you're supporting him is
You
to
don't
say
don't
that he's
listen to
not going to do right, is to not listen to what he said. I'm like, do you not hear yourself? This is dangerous. And the fact that the most reasonable Republican, like, to me, like, because Ben has the guts to and really ain't got much, but he has the guts to call him out sometimes.
Yeah.
Where like other Republicans aren't even doing it, and Ben is donating to his campaign. It's just like if that's what we have for a reasonable Republican, it is we're doomed.
Well, here's what I'll say though, and to defend some of those Republicans, including Ben, we're talking about how bad Trump is as a unique individual, but conservatives are thinking about wokeism, and that's what's on their mind, right? So like
That's
we're
dangerous.
thinking about Trump, they're thinking about their daughter wrestling some man, and dealing with that, right? So we got stuff on our side too. It's not equal, and it's not nearly as large, but we got stuff on our side too that they're afraid of.
I get it, and I will say it's the polarization is what's concerning. And like there's another thing that's in relation to the polarization, there's something that I've been wanting to ask you about that to me is going to do nothing but increase it. And it's troublesome. And it just appeared this year, to my knowledge. Election betting. What is this? Like, like we're now able to bet on the results of a presidential election. Do you know how much distrust I think that would put into the system, especially knowing how much money is already put into campaigns? We're reaching record highs in terms of billion-dollar campaigns and people investing money to now be able to bet on the outcome of of an election. To me, places so much distrust and so much polarization into our system. It's concerning, but I'm interested in like your thoughts on this new election betting in its possible ripple effects.
I mean, I don't think it makes it less trustworthy. I mean, I'm more concerned about Citizens United, where you got corporations spending infinite money on, what, because like the amount that an individual can contribute to a campaign is like really is tightly regulated. It's tightly regulated.
Right.
It's small, but like if you were a corporation now, all of a sudden it's infinite, right?
Oh,
It's like
super PACs.
yeah. So
Yeah.
why can a common man only put in a little bit of money, but if it's a corporation, it can do infinite money, right? And that's the corporations tend to be now as much as corporate Republicans tend not to think so. Corporations are conservative. And people who lead corporations are conservative. They may look liberal because they exist in a market where if you look racist or something, it's bad for business. But MBAs, people who actually run companies, these aren't liberal folks. I mean, like the business community historically has almost always supported a Republican candidate because they're going to deregulate the industries and they're going to cut the tax rate, which are things that people who own companies like a lot. So I'm more concerned with Citizens United in terms of people betting on it. I mean, maybe like a negative effect is like if they think Trump's going to win, even if they don't like him, then they bet that he's going to win. Then they want to make it happen by voting for him, even though they wouldn't have otherwise. Like maybe there's that, but I mean, it's still your prerogative to vote for Trump if you want to. So I mean, it doesn't bother me much in terms of like the election integrity side.
I think I think it enhances distrust. I think because what ends up happening, I think, is it could incentivize the spread of misinformation to me. I think it causes people, I think you're going to have aggressive marketing. And I think that can be a easy misinformation tool. I think now you're going to have conspiracy theories to where it's just like
We already
now,
got all that stuff. The
I
misinformation,
know,
conspiracy
but I'm
theories. You think
saying
it's going to be worse?
I think it's going to balloon it. Like I think this could be one of the worst things for our economy if it takes hold. I mean, for not for our economy, for our democracy, if it takes hold, because I think it will feed into skepticism. I think it will feed into conspiracy theories. I think people will view political outcomes through a fixed manipulation profit sort of narrative, and that's because we already have that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's where I think it's even more concerning now because now you're betting on an outcome and you have a particular outcome that has a financial value behind it, and I think that is it's dangerous. Like I see that I see this as one of the biggest threats to our stability and democracy in the recent years. Like to me, when I seen that Robinhood announced it, and that it was like I seen that the app whatever Kalashi, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, that they came out. But then once I seen that Robinhood was adapting it, I'm like, okay, this is starting to take hold in the market now. If other companies really start to see this as trending, this is going to push us in a total different direction that I don't like. If personally, I think the federal government should stop it.
Just regulate it.
Absolutely, I think it should not be allowed. I think this is something that should certainly be stopped by the federal government. I don't know what entity would reside over this, like if you're talking about betting, but I think this is something that we need to like. There needs to be a campaign to get this stopped early on, or we are. I think we're looking at something that is dangerous,
Like what's the danger of it?
extremely dangerous.
Because like people will be mad they lost money, not just the election.
Right, and the potential for corruption. Like you have, there's the potential for conspiracy theory. There's a lot there, bro. There is a lot there. Once you get like right now, I think like in terms of the pool of the money that was on Kalashi or whatever it was, is like something like around $50 million or something like that, which is a growing amount. But in terms of election, like the money in elections right now, like Kamala has spent over $1 billion, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just like if that money happens to find itself, like right now it's the small pool of 50 million. If that money, if that pool grows by measures of 10, 5, like that becomes dangerous. That becomes
It's an
extremely
incentive to
dangerous.
try to hack it or whatever.
Absolutely. And I think that is like, it's to me, if we don't stop this now, I think we could be creating increased polarization, corruption, conspiracy theories, distrust in our election for years to come. I think this is something that's like that needs to be stopped right now. Like I'm scared of it, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we haven't seen the impacts of it yet, but I can understand where you're coming from theoretically. Like if it, if it were some very, very large amount of money, now you basically have a bounty to game the election.
Right.
Out for whomever decides to invest a lot in it. Yeah, I mean
And
that's something that hedge funds actually do. Sometimes it's an investment strategy where like when if one company is thinking about buying another company, then oftentimes the target company stock price goes up, right? Because they know there's going to be a big
right,
liquidity event when they get acquired. But sometimes like those are negotiations, right? So it'll either work out or it won't. And if it doesn't work out and you bought that company stock at a high price, well, you're going to lose money because the price is going to fall back down to whatever it was before. But if you are right that the acquisition goes through, then you can make money by buying early and then letting the price rise as this deal comes to fruition. But here's the thing about hedge funds: when you buy the stock of the target company, expecting it to go up due to the acquisition,
the
then
price.
no, you also have voting rights because stock comes with voting rights. So you can buy enough stock and then force it to happen because you bought it. So you can almost
Right.
guarantee it. If you buy enough stocks, and so like because if you buy the stocks, like it's a negotiation between the buying company and target company. So if you buy enough of the target company, or even the parent company, I guess you could. But if you buy enough of the target company, then you're a shareholder and you can influence those negotiations to make it happen and guarantee that payoff, right? So it's almost like the hedge fund thing, right? It's like, okay, well, if I put enough money into this bet, now I have an incentive to do what I can to make it
To
happen,
make
right?
And that's the danger. That to me, that again, that's another dangerous component. People, that's a capitalistic driver that goes against the values of a democracy. Because now, at some point, like, let's say for instance, I don't want to vote for Donald Trump, but there's $5 billion in the pool, and there's a 60% chance that Donald Trump is going to win. It's in my and I got $1,000 on it.
It's in your
It's in my
interest to vote for Donald Trump
right.
monetarily.
Right. That is dangerous. Like that is extremely dangerous because you will have people that will vote their interests relative to their ideology. And it's just like, and or you'll just have people voting in terms of their financial interests relative to ideology again,
Yeah,
which
I
is
like money being out of politics, and that's something that Democrats have always been for. Like Democrats have always been for keeping money out of politics.
right. And that's to me, we aren't there right now. Like we're not seeing Democrats aren't seeing this as a danger. And I'm like, there should be some red flags going off. Like this should be at the top of our conversations right now with Democrats in particular, because there are I can think of 20 different red flags where this can have a terrible outcome if extended. And like the we know with history that money moves, and it's just like these contracts are only going to get larger. Like people are only going to get more interested, and it's just like the more money that gets into this particular financial financial method of betting, I think it puts our democracy at a serious risk. And I'm like, I'm almost extreme about it to the point to where like I think there should be legitimate protest. There should be like outrage about the potential that this could have for our democracy. I think this is scary.
Yeah, and I knew it was happening, but I didn't think about it this clearly. You know, since you brought it up, I do think that that's a valid understanding. I'm curious if there are any laws that apply to stuff like that right now. It sounds like they're not because people are able to do it. But if there
Right.
aren't, then maybe we should think about because yeah, I'm all for just keeping money out of politics, right? I don't want big super PACs doing stuff. I mean, again, that was the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law had strict regulations on how much any individual could support any campaign because they wanted to keep the money out. And then Citizens United said, "Oh, but if it's a corporation, then they can spend infinite." And
They
it's
can
like,
spend it
okay,
right.
and then now we got betting, right? So like the spirit of the law and what Democrats have always been, first of all, the spirit of the law originally, and then what Democrats tried to protect that spirit of the law is to keep money out of politics as much as possible. So yeah, I can certainly understand that being a good path to explore.
Yeah, I hope that we do. I do know that there was an entity that fought them initially, but they lost in court. They lost in court. I don't know what the entity was who fought them, but they lost in court, and the the startup Kalishi, whatever that app is, they were able to go out, and now Robinhood was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and copy it, and now Robinhood introduced that, and I'm like, this. I don't know how the courts would have allowed something like that to happen, but this to me is an example of how capitalism in its extreme form, I mean, it will show its hands in your form of government. And this is where it's just like this is bad because at that endpoint you could have a higher tier of any of the people that win in the capitalist game. They will control everything. They will control your government. They will control your supply. They will literally control. I mean, there's conspiracy theories that they control everything now. Like
No,
I
they
can
don't.
understand.
They totally
Right.
don't. They
Right.
totally don't. And here's
Right.
the thing. The funny thing is, the people who say those conspiracy theories, the people who believe those, tend to be Trump supporters.
Right.
But guess what? Trump won. So like the fact that
Right.
he won is evidence that either your conspiracy is wrong or they're
Right.
so weak that it might as well be wrong.
Right. But they could make it come true. Shit like this could make it come true. Where it's just like your conspiracy theory. Like let's say he doesn't, and I don't even want to say I don't even want to say this hypothetical because Republicans just don't even. I'm not saying y'all have a problem with the hypothetical. So but let's say for instance George Soros was to like what the fuck is 50 million to him? What the fuck is
Nothing.
100 million to him?
Nothing.
You know what I mean? What the fuck is 200 million to him?
I mean,
So
200
it's
might be a
just
little
like
bit, but it's still a little bit.
yeah, like but like you know what I mean? Like or Elon Musk would donate $1 million to random people to vote in the like this is getting like get that money in the elections. Elon Musk being able to donate $1 million to register voters, persuading them essentially to vote Republican. I'm like, shit like this is dangerous. We are now
Yeah,
like,
get the money out of here. Get the money out of politics.
yep,
Yep.
yep. And that's where I think it's dangerous in the left. If we don't focus on that, I know
Because
we
that's what rich people
outspend.
do. Rich people can't vote, right? I mean,
Right,
they vote once, but I mean, by definition, rich folks are a small percentage of the population, so they're
right,
not going to win any elections with their vote. But what they do is like, okay, I got to use my money and put my money to work.
right,
And if you
right.
don't regulate that, then you do end up with a situation where rich folks just put their finger
Control
on the scale.
everything.
I mean, I wouldn't say they control everything, but they put their finger on the scale, and then how much weight they can put on the scale depends on how regulated they are.
Right. And that's where it's just like, right now there's not a lot of money in there, but I think you could have like the Koch brothers, and you can have Elon Musk. Like, there's a lot of money that could come out of nowhere. There's a lot of money
Again,
that could
and a
come out
lot
of
another
nowhere.
thing, people tend to think, oh well, especially on the conservatives, like all the big industries and stuff, it's all left. It's like, no, it's not, man. Rich folks tend to be conservative. Like you
Absolutely.
start getting into these nice neighborhoods, high tax brackets and stuff.
Yep.
They make a lot of money. They don't want to pay a lot of taxes. They
Yep.
like,
They
look
want that
now,
money back.
yeah, I'm conservative now. We got to protect this. Protect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's dangerous. That is dangerous. And it's just like, I'm seeing us slow walk into more money going into our elections, creating distrust. And I'm like, you got Elon giving out these $1 million, I don't even know what
So
you call it.
speaking of Elon, I know you used to be a big fan of Elon. You used to be a big fan of Elon,
Yeah.
and now he's been going a different direction. But let's hear him out. Why is Elon the way he is? And it's our fault.
It is our fault.
It's the woke mind virus, as he would
It
say,
is.
right? So it's
It
like
is.
it's us pushing people like Elon into Trump's camp, and that's why I say the only thing we can control is us. If we can get ourselves together, hopefully we stop making more Elon Musks. You
I
know,
mean, but you're right. Hey, but with and the destruction of Elon, I think is a whole. I mean, that could be a whole video if I'm being honest with you. Because like, with Elon, you're right. I think he would attribute the woke mind virus to his reasoning for leaving the center and like going extreme. And I think he would. I think if I'm being honest, I think his biggest reason for that would be his son
yes,
and
because if
and
in
his
his
son.
mind he's like, I lost my son. And he's
Right.
like, if you
And
take
his
my son from me, I look,
that's it.
whatever it is,
All
I'm
yeah.
coming, right? And
Yep.
that's his mind state.
He was like, this ideology destroyed my son. My son is dead. He's taking these hormones. He'll likely not be able to have children anymore. He's like, effectively, my son is dead. And I think like when you make statements like that, number one, that this is when the left harshly came against him when he made statements like that.
But
And I
he's
think
not the only Republican that's worried about his kids though, and like that's
right,
another thing that
right,
is not
right,
going in our favor.
right. And now, but that's the thing. Like, if I'm being honest, I think that's something that the left has to battle out because I think your center left, like everybody on the left isn't for giving children hormones. I'm an example of that. And it's just like
Most of
so
us aren't.
is right, and so it's just like I think the left is doing a bad job of understanding its base. I think the left is in a way they're doing the same thing where they're
They're
kind
trying to
of
keep everybody happy, and
right.
then that gives Republicans ammunition.
Absolutely, because it's just like that is what made Elon Musk extreme, hands down. He was like, "This ideology destroyed my son. This is so dangerous. If it can happen to me, it can be done to anyone. This has to be stopped at all cost." And it's just like this is something that's dangerous. This is more dangerous than looking at economics. This is more dangerous than
More
looking
dangerous than Donald Trump to
at
them.
Donald Trump. Yep,
Yes,
this is something that needs to be that needs to be
because
fought in every
while we're
instance.
talking about saying, "Hey, look at Trump," Elon looking at his daughter,
Right,
son, right, whatever
right.
exactly. He's like, nah, no.
That's and that's yeah, and that's what made him extreme. Now, I will say his response to that has been over. It's an overreaction, and I think it's consumed him. And I
To me,
think there's
you can't blame. Like, here's the thing, right? I think he's doing what a lot of parents do,
absolutely
which is over, like over trying to protect him. Like to me, like that's weakness and it's disrespect to say like, oh well, it's the woke mind virus that got my son. Like, no, your son just did that.
Right.
Like you trying to blame something else. Like
Something that, right.
that's who he is, right?
Right.
Look, he had plenty of opportunity. Anybody that's like, oh well, it was the media that made me gay. It was the media that made me trans. It's like, you know how much straight stuff you see in the media? You know,
Right.
almost everything is straight. Almost everything you see, like 9 out of 10 relationships, couples is going to be straight. Almost everything. If the 1 to 2 times you saw something gay made you
And you
gay,
like
it's
this.
like it ain't because of the media. Like that's
Right.
you. That is
Right.
straight up you. And even
Right.
Elon said like his son was gay. Like he knew his son was gay earlier before he was trans. He knew his son was gay, but at least he was still admitting he's a boy. So it's like you can blame society if you want to, but it's you is what it is. Don't
Right.
blame society. It's you.
Right. You're absolutely right. And that's where, to me, Elon is overreacting. And that's where I think this is where he needs to be like, he would have to have a group of people or like a friend, is to be honest with you. And I don't think in his position, being that he's the one of the richest, if not the richest man on the planet at any given time, it's going to be hard to have people around you that are going to give you constructive criticism. Like, you know what I mean? A friend that's actually going to be there, that's not self-interested, that's going to be like, I understand what you're doing. But like when you have that, when you are literally the richest man in the world, it's in everyone's interest to make sure that you're happy or condone your actions. And I think someone hasn't let him know that, like, if you would have a conversation with yourself from 10 years ago, you would be in awe of the person that you are right now. You would be completely disgusted. Like, you would look at yourself as a failure. And no one is letting
Well,
him know
I
that.
don't want to hold Elon to some high standard. Like I feel like a lot of people do, but I just treat him like a normal dad, and that happens to his son, and he's like, I like that.
He's
That'll hit you.
overreacting.
That'll hit you though.
I mean,
That'll
it
hit
will
you.
hit you, but
And
he's
and and and
overreacting.
so what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to hold him to some like, hey, you're supposed to be super smart or whatever. Like, think about your principles. I'm just like he's a dad. He's not happy with what happened with his son, and now that's changed. That's changed his politics. That's changed his worldview.
But when
It
you make
made him
such a
basically a single issue voter. At that point.
you're right, but that's extreme. That's extreme. If I
Yeah, but
ever
I don't think he would regret it though. Like I feel like you're saying like, oh, well, like the old you would frown upon that, but like no, the old him. If you're saying if he sees this thing he's doing, he wouldn't be happy about it. But if he saw a picture of his son, he wouldn't be happy about that either, right?
I think there's a there's a piece of me that's assuming reason
Yeah, yeah.
with
Don't
his
assume reason.
previous
Don't assume reason.
with
He
his previous, and I get you, but like, to me, again, it's just like you prefaced before, I had a strong affinity for Elon. Like, I thought he was reasonable. I thought that before he made this turn, I would say in the last 4 years, 3 to 4 years, I thought he was reasonable. I mean, politically, he was center. He was really center left. And it's just like when you make a switch like that from center left all the way to the right,
what
that's
I'm
a
saying,
big.
he's more of a dad than he is reasonable. That's what I'm saying. Like, don't treat him like he's a bash and a reason. Treat him like he's a dad, and that explains his behavior. That
I mean,
explains his behavior perfectly.
but it's an overreaction, is what I'm saying. Like, even though
It
he's a
is
dad, it's
overreaction,
just
but
like,
people overreact. And that's what
but
I'm
right,
saying. Don't hold Elon to any higher standard than you would hold anybody else, is what I'm saying.
but I'm saying,
Because he's proving
if
that he's like everybody else.
but if I know your history, it would be like the same thing for you. If I know your history, I know who you are. You're center left. I know, like, and I know what you represent. I know your morals. If you were to have an extreme event in your life occur, and all of a sudden it pushed you drastically to the right, I would say, number one, whatever event that it was, that had to be extremely traumatic. Like, number two, is there any way but because I know that you understand reason.
Well, here's the
Is
thing:
there?
you know me more than you know Elon, right? And so
I
what I'm
do.
saying is potentially you didn't know him as well as you thought,
That could be
right?
potentially
Maybe
true.
he's not as like maybe
He's not as
he
reasonable
looked
as
very
I
principled.
believe.
Yeah, maybe he looked very principled and reasonable, but he's more like a regular dad than he is like a bastion of reason and objectivity. And what
I
I'm saying
think
is, if you look at how he behaves as if he's a regular dad more than he behaves as if he's a bastion of reason.
Actually, he does. I mean, it's just like, I mean, the reason comes in terms of, I guess, all of his entrepreneurial ideas and businesses, and it's just like, and before that, being center left and really being out of politics and just trying to create as much value as you can in the world, and then to go completely opposite. It's just like, to me, I assumed a reason there. Like, I did. I assumed that there was reason
And I
there.
think it's reasonable to assume it, but when the evidence changes, then I think you
You,
got to change.
absolutely, you got to
Yeah,
change with the evidence. Yeah,
right.
and
So like
yeah,
the reasonable is to say, man, my son was persuaded in that direction. I'm not happy about it, but that doesn't mean that my principles change or anything like that. Like that's the reasonable take, right? But then the emotional father take is I gotta fight this no matter what, and that's who he has shown himself to be.
that is. I mean, and I agree that you have to take people at their word, which again is like, I have to. What Ben Shapiro wasn't willing to do, I got to be willing to do. Where with Elon,
Right.
it's just like, he. I got to take him at his word, and I am. It's just like, what you say and your actions. I'm certainly valuing, and it's concerning.
And here's the
And to
thing, like
me,
I don't want to come across like I'm saying that Elon is unreasonable. Because people can be very intelligent and very equipped in certain domains of work, and then not particularly impressive in others. And even Jordan Peterson would say that like on the high end of intelligence, when you go up, there's a lot more variation
right,
in terms of like what you're actually good at and what you're not. So, you could have like, for instance, like, take me, like I'm pretty good with like reason and logic and, verbal stuff. But what I'm not good at is like directions. I'm horrible at directions, man. Like I'm probably bottom fifth percentile or something like and when it comes to like directions and knowing where I'm at, I'm just not good at that. I just really don't care about physical space and stuff like that. I'm not a
I
visual
got you.
person. So I think, you could have someone like Elon and say, hey, we need someone who's going to be able to raise money, who's going to be able to put the team together, who's going to be able to inspire people for the future, who's going to be able to work on cool projects and think outside the box and have ideas that he can come in and do that. Great. But then, if you have him do something else, you might be like, wow, like I was surprised that you're not good and making good decisions in this other context. And like that doesn't mean just because he's not good at other contexts, just because we don't respect him over there, doesn't mean that as a whole he's unintelligent or unreasonable. It just means that, if he's building rockets, then maybe you listen to him. And if he's doing something else, then maybe you don't.
You're right. I mean, it's to me, it's just like, and I 1,000% agree with you. And like, there are definitely different intelligences, and I think intelligence can be sectionalized depending on like what it is that you're doing. And I completely agree with that. But I will say there are broader intelligences, or not even intelligences. There are broader ideologies that affect damn near everything, like religion and politics. And if that's corrupted, it, that's you. I mean, it affects multiple facets, and it's just like, and that's where I think it's with Elon. This corrosion is starting to affect other facets of his intelligence, and it sucks because it's just like it.
Well,
it
you don't have an option. You don't have an like if you're going, and again, if you're going to support Trump, because here's the thing, JD Vance, I feel for JD Vance, man. I really, because like he just dodges. Like whenever there's a situation he can't really defend, he just has to dodge, man, or he has to just say, I mean, we can't. like listen to the experts. Like there's nothing you can do.
Right.
Like if you're going to support Trump, if you're going to support that, you have to abandon your logic. You can't keep your logic and support Trump at the same time. Like you even Ben Shapiro. I mean, just, don't listen to what he says. Like you
Right.
can't even listen.
Right.
You
Like,
cannot be logical and listen to him and still support him. You have to
right.
sacrifice it. You got to stop listening to him, or you got to just admit stuff that's not true. You know, like for instance, when they asked Vance, what I'm pretty sure they asked Vance, Walls asked Vance, he said, did Trump win the 2020 election? And Vance said, we need to focus on, what did he want to focus on? It was censorship. Focus on censorship. And Walls is like, he said, what Walls said, that's a damning non-answer. He said, I
It
asked you if you
is.
wanted it, and you said, well, censorship is a more dangerous threat to democracy than anything else. It's like, you won't answer it.
Right.
Like Vance knows that like he can't in good faith say that Trump won, but he knows he can't say that Trump lost because then he's going to get kicked out, right? So he's like, I got to just talk about something different. You cannot remain logical and support him at the same time. That's why it's a loyalty test, right? And that's the best loyalty test, right? Because if what I'm saying is true, it's not a good loyalty test, right? But if I'm like, hey, you got to
I'm
say
done.
something that's untrue and you know it, right? Either you're going to do it or you're going to not. And if you do it, then I know you're loyal. And if you don't do it, well, then I know you're not loyal and I got to kick you out.
Man,
So I got to be like, hey,
Republicans.
Carlos, tell me that this month is August, right? And like, if you say it's August, then I know you're loyal. And if you don't say it's August, then I know that you got principles, right? And that's the best way to test somebody, man. That's the best way to test them.
I want to let all Republicans know it's November. Like, I want all Republicans to know it is November 3rd. And it's a shame, man. It is a shame. It is a shame because that is like I'm almost in awe. Like I am almost in awe because it's like it's so dangerous that you can literally say anything and they have to toe party lines. That is so fucking dangerous. And the fact that they are doing it and that you can give examples of it, it just like where are we? Like this is where are the Republicans right now? And it's just like again, it's hard to imagine where holding the left accountable brings the Republican Party back. It's like I'm like the right has to have some sort of wake up call. There has to be some sort of alarm ringer from within because it
So here's what I think. Here's what I think. Trump is only powerful because he owns the base and particularly the margins. And that's how we pick our representatives, right? We
right
pick representatives and stuff in primaries, right? So it's only Republicans, and even then, it's only Republicans that vote in primaries, which are the most motivated and active Republicans. The same on the Democratic side. It's the most extreme people that make the choices, and then when you add gerrymandering on top of it, where you got super safe seats. Where
right
everybody knows that then it's the only election is, well, who's going to come out the farthest right or the farthest left, right? Because you know that the other side is going to win because the district's fully blue or fully red. So it just becomes an extremist contest. And when it's a contest of extremism, Trump wins that contest, right? He's going to win the extremist contest. But if instead it were a contest like a general election, something where you really need to appeal to moderates and even maybe a few people on the other side, well, at that point, Trump doesn't have the power to just kick you out, right? But in the current context, where everything is safe seats and it's all only Republicans in the primary picking that person, well, then yeah, you're on a tend towards extremism. So there's things that we might be able to do at a system level that can disincentivize extremism, because right now we're incentivized to be extreme. It's also why like a weird thing why like if you live in almost every state, not maybe almost every, but the vast majority of states, United States, your vote doesn't matter because your state is
right
determined. And it's like it doesn't matter whether Kamala gets 70% of California or 55. It doesn't matter how many votes she gets because she's going to get California regardless.
right
So only really a few people in a few swing state make a difference. So I think there's Now we can't change a lot of this stuff easily. A lot of stuff I'm talking about, require, either at the state level making changes to like state constitutions, or at the national level making changes to the
Electoral.
yeah. Well, I'm saying the Constitution, right? So you have to change the Constitution to
Right.
change that, and those are very high. It requires a lot to like make amendments to that stuff. So it's difficult, but I think that part of the reason that Trump is so powerful, and part of the reasons that both sides are extreme, even the left, is because our system incentivizes extreme, candidates.
And that's the where when a system has to rely upon good faith actors, then you have a bad system. It's just like that. If the system is contingent upon individuals acting in good faith or being reasonable, then that system needs to be changed. And I think that just indicates that we have a faulty system. And
Yeah, now I think we scare conservatives. We start talking about changing the system though. They're like, hold on now, you want to change the rules? That's exactly what Elon Musk is fear mongering about. Is, oh, well, if Democrats get in, it's going to be the last election because they're going to change this rule. They're going to add these states. They're going to do X, Y, Z. They're going to pack the Supreme Court. They're going to do all of this stuff. That's fuel for conservatives.
it's, I mean, not necessarily not extreme, but it sounds like we have a bad system, and it sounds like there are some changes that need to be made, but that needs to be the consensus, and that shouldn't
Well,
be
here's the thing: making the systm more fair is in Democrats' interest. It's not in Republicans' interest,
right,
right?
right,
Like, and that's
right.
why like election integrity and like people worrying about voter ID and voter fraud and stuff. That's a Republican issue because the fewer people that vote, the
The
better
better.
it is for Republicans, right? Just
Yep.
because the more people are Democrat than Republicans. But if the harder you make it to vote, the fewer people to vote, the more likely Republicans are to win. So that in terms of like dealing with the electoral college, like they got like a couple good elections lately because of the electoral college. Like, do they have an incentive to try to make every vote count? No, they don't have an incentive to do that, right? So yeah, I think that's kind of the challenge here. Is only one side of the aisle has an incentive to really like be honest about the fairness of this stuff, right? So and even like the election ID stuff, right? Like I support ID, but
Right,
like the fundamental issue is that voter fraud just isn't really a thing. Like people aren't
right.
because you go to it's a crime, right? Like anybody risking going to jail to vote multiple times. You don't even vote once.
To, right.
So like you got to be a politically active criminal, which first off, criminals tend not to be politically active.
Politically active.
And
Right.
even then, now you got to like start, having fake identities, voting for other people, and then guess what? It's easy to catch because if that person actually goes out and vote, now you can see that two people voted with the same identity, so you get caught real quick. It's like, why would you even do that crime?
Right.
To like go in five different voting places at once. It just doesn't make sense, right? It's never really happened. But
And there's
like
no incentive
yeah,
for it.
it's no good
It's
incentive
like
to do it, right? But the conservatives use that possibility as a justification to just make it harder to vote because it's in their interest to make it harder to vote. So I think it's a hard problem to fix just because only one side of the aisle has an interest in fixing it.
well, I mean, we gotta. It has to be on both sides. That's the thing. That's to me where education comes in, and it's just like I don't like good ideas being polarizing. It's just like that's unfortunate. Where if you realize there's a crack in the system that needs to be addressed, then there's a fear in addressing that crack because people will make it a whole. And it's like it's a crack. Let's just address the crack. Let's not add nothing to it. Let's fill the crack or let's make it better. It's just like we don't have to replace the whole road. And I think that's the fear mongering that Republicans would have with us changing the system. But
Oh, that
it
they make
seems
a slippery slope. Oh, if they do this,
right,
then next thing you know, there's going to be no more elections.
right, right, and it's just like that. That doesn't need to be the case. It just needs to be the case
for
that we
instance,
have
for instance, if Democrats are like, "Hey, let's make the election day a national holiday. That way, people can
to
actually
have
go there without
right,
having to worry about the work." Republicans ain't going for
right.
that. They don't want people voting. Look, stay.
Like,
Do not vote.
well, it's the dumbest thing that it's not a national holiday that people have to work on the same day that they're participating in their democracy. Like, what is this?
Because
What
it's
what
not in their interest for people to vote, and that's just the truth. That is the raw truth of the matter, and that's why they don't support it.
we got like that's crazy. Like this is. the world that we live
Like that's
in,
probably the simplest thing because like
literally,
if you talk about voter fraud and stuff, and like how really nobody does it, like they can kind of like push back on that argument a little bit. But like, why should it be a national holiday? Why shouldn't it? It's like
uh,
the only reason is because they don't want you to vote. That's the only reason.
like it's the like the only it would be the most American holiday. Like it's the most patriotic holiday that
Right.
we could ever have. Literally, like it should literally be. It would be the most important holiday.
In the nation. For the
Literally,
patriotic sense. I mean, maybe Christianity, Christmas, and all that. But like
right.
for the country itself, yeah, this is our day to go vote and make your voices heard. Republicans know more people vote, less likely they are to win, so they don't want it to be a national holiday. And it's that same fundamental principle, which is why they're all about voter fraud and stuff, which has never really existed at any scale that would change anything. But it's just that's the clearest evidence that they want to make it hard for people to vote.
It's ridiculous. It's, to me, I think the Republican Party. We certainly have some issues to address on the left. And I like again, I think the extreme left is certainly getting a larger voice in terms of the ideologies that are being discussed. But I think the center, um, I think we need to vocalize our perspectives a little bit more, and I think that needs to be the legitimate focus because with the left, at least we're reasonable, and at least there's hope. For the right, I I'm not seeing a way out. It's just like I don't see a way out unless Trump is defeated and this is the end of MAGA. That's the only way I see a way out. I think at that point, I think you return to your reasonable
Well,
Republicans.
I don't want to give Trump too much credit. I don't think that MAGA goes away when Trump goes away. I mean, I don't know if
Ah,
they'll
you're
be
right.
able to.
You're right.
I don't know
You're
if they'll
right.
be able to like fill his shoes. Like I don't know which individual would be able to have the same immunity that he has from everything that he does. I don't know. I don't know who else could pull that off. But I think a lot of that grievance politics that's going to stay around.
I think I think MAGA like I think the temperature will get turned down. But when I think about it, like you're right, I don't think MAGA goes away. I think Trump will make himself the kingmaker. Uh, at that point, I think he'll still have a hold on the Republican Party. Hopefully, they somebody in the Republican Party, some Republican strategist, deems that as a bad idea.
No,
And
here's the thing: they already deemed it a bad idea. They can't do anything about it. It's as long as Trump keeps winning, and by winning I mean in the margins, like and
right,
like these primaries. As long as he can, like, if Trump has the power to support a primary candidate against you and keep you
right,
out, he owns the party.
right,
Yeah,
right.
when his prime when he supports a primary against a Republican and he fails, that's when they can stop because they don't want to listen to him right now. They just don't have an option because he'll just kick him out. So I think that's what it's not on Republican leadership to make that decision. It's on the people.
Yeah, I mean, but I think you're right, and I think it's not necessarily on Republican leadership, but like I think parties have a reasonable amount of power, as the Democrats show in our process this year, where we got rid of a candidate and anointed a new one.
No, I don't
So
think
it's
so,
like
man. I think if Biden wanted to stay, I don't think there's much the Democratic Party could have done. I think he just got persuaded to get out.
I mean, I think he was pushed. I think
He
it was a
was
nice.
pushed, but he could have said
Uh,
no. He could have said
uh,
no. He
yeah, I mean,
had the
he certainly could
delegates,
have said
right?
no.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's nothing you could do if he accepted the
right.
delegates. There's nothing he could do. I think he just enough people were like, "We're not going to play ball and support you," and the money's drying up. That he's like, I mean, I can't. I mean, what I'm going to do? Fight everybody? Right? It's just nothing he could do. But I don't think the parties are that powerful, man. I really don't. I think it's all about the voters, which is a good thing, right? It's a democracy,
That is a good thing.
and that's exactly why Trump still has power because he has the primary voters.
I think like I agree with you. It certainly is the voters. I mean, it all boils down to the voters. But I think the Republican strategist, and people really don't understand, especially the Republican Party. They don't understand how much of Trump's narrative was constructed and not by him. It's just like people really don't understand the Steve Bannons and Jeff Sessions and like Mitch McConnell's that really provided the pathway and really wrote the the narrative for Donald to to push us to where we are. So I think like there are some strategists and there are some parties that I think that or some people in power that do that have the strategic option to push Republicans in another direction, and I hope that they do that because people don't realize how strong that push was with your Jeff Sessions, Steve Bannon's. It's just like they were the architects.
Yeah, I mean,
And,
Trump isn't a big planner, so I'm with you that if you need someone to really concoct a scheme, same thing, Project 2025, right? Trump ain't thinking
right,
about Project. He ain't writing
right,
nothing. He ain't making no bunch of
right,
documents. He's not a thinker
right,
like that, right?
right.
So yeah, there's other people that do that, but what I'm saying is like the actual sane leadership of the Republican Party would have pushed Trump out if they could have. They just couldn't.
Well, they gotta do a better job. They gotta.
Well, I mean, I'm happy they couldn't, man, because that's democracy, man. Like, if your elites don't like them, but the people do, well, that's a democracy. The people rule, man. We just gotta hope the people make good decisions.
Yeah, and that goes back to education. But you damn right. It's just like it's like if you make a decision, if you're making it off of feelings and you're not making an informed, educated decision, then to me it's likely going to be wrong. You can feel like you're making the right one, but at least be informed.